Before we get started, let's set the mood first. No, not that mood. The year is 1984. Reagan is running for a second term. Crack was a big thing, and a year later, the radio was playing songs like You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record, baby, right round, round, round. Or even It's true, we make a better day, just you and me. Now that you got the mindset, we're going to introduce you to 8 people. 6 are very important, and 2 are minor, but they do have an impact. The setting takes place in Bakersfield, California, specifically on Kern County, on a June. The sun comes down and cools the summer heat, and you're resting to start another day. All of a sudden, you hear a big knock. Jumping out of bed, you enter the door, and with the swing of the door, 2 men are standing with a gun on one hand and a search warrant on the other. That's how John Stoll's life changed from a working man to being accused of a child molester. The other 5 people who were also accused were Ricky and Marcella Pitts, Brenda and Scott Kniffen, and Jeff Moldal, all working class and all got accused of the same crime. Witch Hunt is about the child abuse sex scandals in the 80s. Over 36 people were convicted the same year and the same crime, and 34 convictions were overturned. The other 2 unfortunately died in prison. The 8 culprits, with quotation marks around culprit, were arrested in their house or workplace, and the children were taken away by Child Protective Service. The way the trials were conducted were as followed. The prosecutors were rounding up all the kids in the culprit's neighborhood and used the culprit's children as well for testimony. Once questioning was taking place, both the Child Protective Service worker and the officer were constantly asking the kids if they were touched in a wrong way or were molested. And this part took hours and hours, and most of them were 7 and 10. So being asked for hours and hours, it's a lot of strain to a little kid until they gave in and just gave the answer that favored both the worker and the officer. At first, the children were telling the truth. They weren't molested or touched in any way. But after, with the constant pressure from the other party, they changed the original answer to the ones that landed the 6 people in hot water. Some of the news reporters were using lines like these ones, and bear with me for a moment. Hanging the children with hooks and beating them. The second one was motel sex parties with other strangers. And this one was a gut turner. Going to sex parties where both parents molested them and passed them to strangers to have sex. Yeah, I swear to Christ, I'm not making this shit up. And you gotta have this mindset again. The Cold War and drugs were in play back then, and now molesters were popping left and right out of the blue, and the hysteria was building up. Now we're forgetting the last 2 people, and those are Jack and Jackie Cummings. Yes, Jack and Jackie, alright? And their accusations were being involved in a satanic cult and using kids as sacrifice. Yeah, like I said, the hysteria was building up. With the trials lasting for 6 months or more, the 6 criminals, like I said, once again, criminals with quotation marks, were given sentences from as little as 40 years to 300 and something years in prison. The 6 prisoners were suffering in prison, especially the Kniffens, since they were sending constant letters to each other in order to keep the morale up. But their one goal that they had in mind was being free, so they sent constant letters to lawyers and other help groups to get them out of the system. Years has come by and their morale was still strong, and one day their dream came to reality because the Pitts, who were the first sent to prison, actually were the first to be freed in 1990. 6 years later, the Kniffens were out. Then 3 years later after that, Moldal got out. And finally, in 2004, Stoll was free on his birthday. The Cummings didn't get jail time, but the downside for them was their child was relocated to Canada for a year. Not only did the molesters, and once again, quotation around molesters, were affected, but the kids who were the testifier in court felt the aftermath. When those kids reached adulthood, they were scared being around kids living near them, or even worse, being scared of their own offspring. Overall, this documentary is going to leave you questioning on how the judicial system actually works. Not only that, but it also leaves you in constant debate with yourself, or if you're watching it with another person. Lastly, this documentary can be a little bit of a flashback to anybody that experienced these events back in the 80s, either from word of mouth, newspaper, or TV. Before this review is over, both directors are currently working on two projects together. One named Pick of the Litter, which I couldn't find no information about it, but please, can you help me out? That would be greatly appreciated. And the second one is another music doc, The Story of Failure. It's basically the story of Failure, a 90s alt rock band. Yeah, name. It was the 90s. That's gonna be for another documentary. Don't worry, for another documentary review. Yeah, just don't worry about that. So yeah, check this documentary if you like crime-related topics, a little bit of a flashback, or even Sean Penn. Yep, Sean Penn was the narrator of this film, so if one of those three interests you, check out this movie. Until next time, we'll meet again.